Welcome to this training for distributors of Lumen Radio. My name is Joseph, and today we're going to go through everything regarding wireless DMX. If you have any questions, it's a good thing to write them down. I might take it up in the presentation or perhaps not. In any case, I hope we have a summary session afterwards where you can ask questions to me directly or one of my colleagues. So let's begin with going through the presentation. You write down any questions you might have, and afterwards we can have a new meeting where we actually discuss the things that we didn't cover in this session. Today, we're going to ask ourselves the most common question that everyone asks: wireless. Can you trust wireless DMX? It is wireless. Wireless, is it? Can you trust it? Well, in fact, these guys can. So this is a photo shoot from London Eye in 2023, New Year's Eve. From London with Love, it was called. And the London Eye in the middle is all done wirelessly. It's completely live. It's controlling one fixture in each pod, all wireless in the midst of the fireworks and everything. We got a quote from the lighting designer: "The wireless system was rock solid. We wanted a beat perfect programmed show, so hits and accent needed to be perfect. And we had 100,000 people with mobile phones nearby, and the system did not let us down." This quote is from Tim Rutledge, the lighting designer of the show, and got a really good feedback on how solid this wireless system was. Another example, well, this is what they actually did. We're going to go through the details later on, but yeah, essentially one Stardust and a bunch of Auroras, and it worked flawlessly. Another example we did, just to see sort of how far can we push the limits, is the long shot we did in Switzerland across Lake Zurich, 4,000 meters across the lake. We had a wireless link working perfectly, just to demonstrate sort of what you can achieve when using some accessories instead. You can also do a lot of universes like these guys did in Qatar. 128 universes of wireless DMX lighting up the facades of the two towers of Lusail Plaza, using 1,040 fixtures from Griven. How they all achieved it? Well, careful planning, a bit of know-how, and today I hope to give this know-how to you as well, so that you feel confident in offering wireless DMX in these kind of cases. So yes, you can trust it, and today I will show you how you can trust it, how you can feel really confident in using it. So this is the agenda we're going to have for today. We're going to go through the technology, everything about it, deep dive into all the technical parts. We're going to go through the products, what kind of lineup we have. Then we're going to dig into some of the features that are more advanced, and finally also troubleshooting and some cases where how they solve different problems. So this whole thing will probably take quite some time, and hopefully you feel it's worth it. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Let's get going. We're going to first start, before anything else, we're going to talk about Lumen Radio, just briefly, who we are. So Lumen Radio, we invented CRMX in 2009. Where we are, well, you know Sweden, it's that cold country up north. We're on the west coast of Sweden. This is where we are in Gothenburg, and the city looks a bit like this on a nice sunny day. Our office is somewhere over here, where we are doing all the work. And in here, we have our meetings, we have our development, we have our own production inside the office as well. So we produce all the devices inside our office in Gothenburg, Sweden. So it's all made in Sweden, all the things. We are roughly 65, well now it's actually 75 employees. The majority is R&D. And we're also leading the way forward with ESTA, where Michael Carlson is participating quite good with development of the new protocols as well. So we're very much involved into the industry as well. And we've been there since 2009. And sometimes we like to have a good time as well. So the history of wireless DMX, just because of these two companies that you might have heard of, well, now you should know it because we have done some significant changes. So Wireless Solution was founded in 2003 by Niklas Norlén and a few other persons as well. And they released WDMX, which was the first professional wireless DMX. But, split of opinions, a bit of disagreements, Niklas Norlén moved on to start Lumen Radio in 2009. And at Lumen Radio, we released CRMX. And this is an improved technology. It is better than WDMX because we've designed both. We know this for a fact. And it is more reliable than WDMX. So that's why there are two companies competing. For about a decade they were competing until Lumen Radio managed to acquire Wireless Solution. In 2020, the day before COVID was announced, a global pandemic, that's when we acquired Wireless Solution. In 2023, we merged the distribution networks and the product offerings to become one unified instead. And now together with the whole coverage that we cover about 90% of the professional market when it comes to wireless DMX. One company, one technology. So that's about it. That's the history, the background. Let's move into the technology stuff where we're going to discuss everything about radio waves. Hang on, it might be technical. So, starting out with CRMX and wireless DMX and that part. So, wireless DMX is a complex issue. It's not just hooking up a Wi-Fi. There are many things to take into consideration. Coexistence. It needs to work with other systems, not to interfere others and not to be interfered by others as well. It needs to have a performance that is on par to a cable. You shouldn't know that you're working with a wireless system instead. And it needs to be reliable so you can trust it and know that it will work. It needs to be secure, it needs to be safe so that no one can hack it, no one can take control or take over your wireless network. And it needs to be simple enough as a cable. And that's tricky. It requires a lot of development effort to do all these things. And that is where we have wireless DMX. So it is reliably transporting DMX data. It is crucial that it is reliable, because if it's not, then you can't use it. So it's not using Wi-Fi, it's not using Bluetooth or any kind of commercial open protocol. It is using CRMX, which is a Lumen Radio patented technology that we invented in 2009. It operates on the 2.4 band, so same as a lot of other equipment, but it uses our technology, our radio technology that is invented by us. So what is CRMX? Well, CRMX is what we call our wireless DMX. It has the ability to detect other radio signals in the air, to see what else is out there and identify these as possible other networks. It can be Wi-Fi networks or Zigbee networks, but it can identify and see how will these other networks transmit and so on, and then adapt to that changing reality. This means that we can find any kind of interference in the air, identify how to sort of get around it, and adapt our transmissions to work with that. So this is why it is so reliable. Do we know what's out there all the time? CRMX, it actually stands for Cognitive Radio Multiplex, not something you need to remember. But CRMX operates on the 2.4 spectrum, and what we do is we measure the energy levels and the interference on each and every channel in the 2.4 band. There are 80 channels in the 2.4 band. Wi-Fi typically groups these together to form Wi-Fi band 1 up to 12, 13. But we scan each and every channel 1,500 times per second to see what's out there. And then we pick the best channels at the best time to get our transmissions through. So even if there is transmission in a specific part of the spectrum, we know when it will be silent there, and then we can transmit a bit over there. And since we transmit in this way, we can get through even in the most congested radio environments. We can find these small slots in time and frequency where we can get our stuff through. It is called adaptive frequency hopping. And we're actually, if you want to add more, it's adaptive frequency hopping spread spectrum. We're across the whole spectrum. Cognitive coexistence is what I've just mentioned to you. That is what it does. Cognitive coexistence is the secret sauce that makes CRMX work. The ability to detect, identify, adapt to this changing reality. And cognitive coexistence is part of CRMX. So if you're using CRMX, then you have cognitive coexistence. All the radio modules, all the receivers, all the OEM products, if you're using CRMX, you have cognitive coexistence. It's inside every radio module and every product that you can find with CRMX. Some of the basics that we might hear today, just to make sure that everyone's on the same table, we use transmitters, they're called TX. A transmitter is the point where the wireless DMX signal goes out to the rest of the world. So typically you hook it up to your control desk or whatever you have. The RX is a receiver. It receives wireless DMX signals and outputs them on a cable or outputs them directly into the fixture. So a receiver can typically be your fixture or a box. And a flexible unit or a flex unit or FX, that's a device that you can choose to operate either as a transmitter or a receiver. So you can change modes of operation depending on what you're doing today. What we call when we set up a network, we call it that receivers are linked to a transmitter. So a receiver is when you have a wireless connection between a transmitter and a receiver, then they are linked. A receiver can only be linked to one transmitter. So any receiver can only get transmissions from one transmitter. However, the transmitter can have an unlimited amount of receivers linked to it. So you can have 1,000 receivers if you find that practical linked to one transmitter. What we have is a star network. It is not a mesh network. So the network, typically the most basic version of a network looks like this. You have a transmitter and a receiver. And the receiver is hooked up to fixtures and the transmitter is hooked up to a control desk, a lighting control desk. And that is the most easy example we can do. And of course it is possible then to use multiple receivers to this as well. You can further extend this with having multiple transmitters as well. And as I mentioned, it's a star network, so all the transmissions, it comes from one point and goes out to all the others. So now you know a bit about CRMX, how that works. Now we're going to go into the radio waves, what happens and how you can get better range, basically. Radio waves, they propagate through the air like magic, and different materials will attenuate the signal. It will reduce the signal depending on what kind of materials you're trying to pass through. That's why we say always strive for line of sight. If two antennas can see each other, that means there's nothing in between, then you have line of sight. That's the most optimal condition for a transmitter to a receiver. And we'll see some of the materials here, how they block. Wood is the least bad of building materials. Fresh wood contains a lot of water. Wood outdoors, typically a growing tree, will contain a lot of water, and water is bad for us. So wood will attenuate the signal. Somewhere between 50% and 90% of the signal will be gone while going through wood, depending on how thick it is, how much water is, and so on. But if we go into windows, that is, it depends on what kind of window. If it's a regular window without any kind of shielding, just glass, well, then you might lose about 50%. But if you have a heat shield of some kind, where you, for instance, in hot countries or outdoor facade windows, they can typically be coated by a metal film, and the metal will block a lot of the signal. So then you can have a 99% reduction immediately. So line of sight, well, glass is not really line of sight. It is, even though you can see it, the radio waves will still have to go through something. Metal is really bad. It'll block most of the signal, and especially if it is grounded. If the metal is grounded, it will magically eat up the radio energy. So if you have grounded metal close to your transmitter, that's really bad. So stay away from metal. Metal also bounces radio signals, so they can be bouncing around in funny ways. Concrete, just pure bad. It'll block a lot of radio signals. And finally, water, the worst of all. Total signal elimination. We cannot go through water. So fountains or underwater shoots can be tricky if you're not planning carefully. And when it comes to water, there's one particular case that is often a problem, and that is the wall of water, the crowd. If you have a crowd and in the venue where you're going to be, or if you have a lot of people around, think of them as a wall of water, because humans contain a lot of water. If you have the transmitter box placed on a table next to your lighting desk, then perhaps that desk place isn't high up enough. The transmitter needs to be above head height. You need to get it up. If you don't have the transmitter above head height, well, then you might run into problems. So try to make sure that you get the transmitter box above head height, so that you can go above people's head That's the best possible way of doing it. Something other to consider when placing equipment is the interference of other wireless systems. So there's Wi-Fi networks on the 2.4 band, there's wireless HDMI, microwave ovens even, and base stations, for instance. Some of these devices, they operate directly on the 2.4 spectrum, some do not, but they can still interfere regardless. So you can see the receiver as a device trying to listen very carefully on a weak signal somewhere far away. If the receiver has another wireless system placed nearby that is screaming out a lot of radio signals, then the receiver will have a hard time hearing the signals from the transmitter. So make sure that the receiver is not placed nearby interfering equipment. And it doesn't have to be a 2.4 equipment. If it's a powerful enough transmitter, like a base station, it doesn't matter if it's a 2.4 base station. They will scream really loud into the ears of the poor receiver device. So try to stay away from other wireless things. Also, electronic devices can cause a lot of interference. Power distribution units can sort of leak out a lot of interference of electromagnetic fields. LED drivers can do that as well if you stay close to them. Cable coils, they will actually, if you coil the cable and put a box in there, it'll have a hard time receiving the signals. When it comes to output power, we can adjust the output power of our boxes, of course, both low and high, and too high for many regulations. So we're not alone in the 2.4 band. We need to respect the others and they need to respect us. So screaming is not the solution. Using a higher output power is not the best way of getting things done. If you connect a high gain antenna or similar to your transmitter box, you will have a lot of radio energy going in a specific direction, and that's not always allowed depending on the country. So for directional antennas, you might have to even reduce output power to stay within regulations. Output power, we have 100 milliwatts, which is allowed in most countries. That's the normal setting, the default setting. You can use 280 milliwatts when you go to North America. You're not allowed to use it in other countries. So instead of screaming with the box, trying to push out a lot of signal, what we really advocate is listening carefully instead. Make sure that the receiver can hear better. Instead of having the transmitter box scream louder, make sure that the receiver box can hear better. So optimize the receiver conditions. If you change antennas, it will be the same net effect if you place it on a transmitter or a receiver. The same effect will occur. So if you put a directional on the transmitter, you're breaking regulations. But if you put it on the receiver, you stay within regulations and you will also have the same effect. Okay, and I mentioned these high gain antennas. Let's go into how these work, the antennas. This is some magic stuff, so hang tight. I'm gonna do magic here. The best all-around antenna is the one we ship with. It's not the best for every single case, but for most cases, this is the best all-around. It's a regular 2 dBi antenna. That's a maximum energy coming out in a specific direction. This is an omnidirectional antenna. It goes pretty much all ways. If we look at the schematics of it, from top view, it goes around out in all directions from the antenna. If you look at it from the side, it will go in the shape of an apple, as you see on the drawing. The 3D pictures also pictures the sort of what way the energy goes. So most is going out on the side. So this goes pretty much all directions. This is as close to a sphere as you can come, this 2 dBi antenna. And since nothing comes up out the tip, all the radio energy from antennas comes out from the wide side. So nothing comes out here, nothing comes out here. There's a lot coming out this way, in the shape of an apple when we're talking about 2 dBi antennas. So if I want to have the best possible conditions, this is how you do it. The wide sides towards each other. This is not as good because here it will not receive and not transmit anything from this side. So that is bad. It is possible to align them differently, like this, like this, like this, perfectly fine. And the worst possible version is this. Don't do this. This is the way it should be. The signals radiate from the wide side. There are also other antennas, of course. This is a typical omnidirectional. It goes in all ways. You can consider it as a light bulb going in all directions, but then we also have directional antennas shooting in a specific direction, and you can consider them as a flashlight where you direct the energy in one direction. This is a directional antenna, and when you read the manual, you'll see that all the radio signals come out like this, in a cone shape from this. So you can aim the radio energy here. So when you use this on a receiver, the receiver will hear more in a specific direction and less in the other directions. Consider a case where you have a interference behind you. This is great. Then you won't hear the interference and you will hear more of the transmitter side. One thing that is important to know about gain. Gain, you can purchase a lot of high gain antennas, and what does it do? Well, gain doesn't produce more energy magically. It does not. It's the same amount of energy coming from the box. What you do is change the direction in which it goes. So a high gain omnidirectional antenna. This one has an apple, but if you have a high gain omnidirectional, what you do is you just squeeze the apple into the shape of a donut, perhaps, or a CD, if you want to consider that case. When you have a real high gain omnidirectional antenna, you shoot a straight line out in all directions. So that's good for some cases, and it's really bad for others. So high gain antennas, they can be good, but you need to know why. This has, of course, a high gain. It's a 12 dBi. That's a lot, because it hears a lot in one direction, and the others it doesn't hear a lot, anything at all, barely. So that's why we ship all our items with a standard 2 dBi antenna. It is the best all-round antenna. It works in most cases. Also, we should consider the horizontal alignment of antennas. So in this case, it's a bit exaggerated because it's 2 dBi antenna here, but let's pretend they're high gain antennas. They will have a signal that is quite flat, and if they're in different vertical planes, they will have a hard time reaching each other. In these cases, it's better to simply tilt the antennas like this, so the wide sides are still towards each other. But you have to consider also that you might have other equipment in other places. So that's why on the transmitter, it might be good to have a 2 dBi going in all directions, and on the receivers, you might change depending on where they want to receive the signal from. And when it comes to the OEM customer fixtures, where is the antenna? Well, ask them. We know, for instance, some of them, typically they're placed near the display, or they can be placed in the handles. They can be placed on the lighting, on the actual LED screens. They can be placed on the back. Sometimes they have antenna connectors, so you can actually see the antenna, change the antenna. But often they're also integrated into the fixture and you really don't know. This can be a bit tricky because there's a lot of electronics, a lot of metal in these devices. So it might be hard to know where the receiver is put. You can try to, for instance, shift the fixtures 180 degrees to see if you see a difference. But typically they're on the back side of the fixtures, which means that it might not be the best to have the transmitter box in front of the lights, but rather on the back side of the lights, transmitting to the rear of the fixtures. And if you have a situation with a poor reception and you don't know where the antenna is, then you can always use a DMX cable to connect the receiver with a box. Well, have a receiver box, use a cable to the fixture instead. So, antennas. Free line of sight, not going through materials, that's good. Properly aligned, above head height, get away from the wall of water, away from metal. Metal is bad, especially grounded metal is really bad. Watch out for other interference, other wireless systems and so on, especially on the receiver side. This is an example that we did a problem we had a few days back only. It's a large tower, about 170 meters. And the fixtures up there, they had a hard time receiving the signals. They had a slim receiver up there to receive, and the transmitter was placed on the ground level. On the picture, we see that there are base stations cleverly disguised in the same color as the facade, so you can barely see them. But these base stations, they have a lot of radio energy going straight onto the receiver devices there. So what we proposed before seeing anything else was to use a directional antenna to not hear the interference from behind, but instead focus on the transmitter down below. When we got a new photo, we saw that this was the case. It was placed like this. You can see the slim receiver device there, the white box. The alignment of the antenna is actually really good because it's supposed to receive signals from ground level. However, it's not placed outside the facade. It's actually placed on a sort of a metal part of the facade, which basically means that this antenna is hearing everything from the sky, a bit of interference from the base station behind, and nothing from the ground because there's a metal wall in between. So by moving the box out a few centimeters, getting the antenna out from the facade, improved the signal a lot. Still had some issues because of the base station, so they've changed into directional antennas on these receivers, and voila, perfect signal. So there can be many things that can fix a poor signal. When it comes to planning with radio, you might get these projects where you're going to light up a city square or a facade or something. It's important to locate the interference. If you see other wireless systems nearby, if there's base stations or similar, try to find them. Try to find if you're shooting across metal rooftops. That's really hard because the metal rooftops are almost always grounded, and that will sort of eat up the radio signal crossing it. Try to determine the line of sight before you do the actual installation. And project files, they'll seldom include the neighbors and everything else. If you get a project file, you might get a building. That's all you get. But if you take a look on Google Maps or Street View, you might see that, okay, there's other buildings nearby that might, or other items that might affect it. So if you're not able to go on site, which is really good, then you can always use Google Maps to sort of figure out what does the environment look like here and plan according to that. So strive for line of sight, figuring out where is the best possible transmitter position, what are my options when it comes to data signals and so on. So what is the range? Well, it's a really common question, and it depends. That's why we don't specify a fixed range. It's more important to know how to affect or change. Know your environment, know your interference, how to place the antennas, select the right antenna for the job. So typically we say several hundred meters in line of sight outdoors. It is possible to get 1,000 meters with a standard antenna. The technology can do it, but we can't guarantee it in a way because there's so many things that might affect it. So you can do that, but then you need to do prior testing to know that it will actually work. And the antennas can greatly affect range in both ways. If you use the wrong antenna or use it in the wrong way, then you will have a worse range, of course. So it's more important to instead ask, how long can I go? Well, learn how to know your tools. Use when to use a directional antenna, where is the interference, and all those things. Learn to consider these things instead, and how to improve your range. The wireless ecosystem. Now you know a bit about technology, the antennas, the protocol. So why is wireless so good? Why do we like it? Well, it's so much more than just a wireless link. So the wireless ecosystem. Well, let's start with the most common product that we sell. The most common product you can find from Lumen Radio is our radio modules. This is what we sell. We put this into our CRMX technology. We put it into a radio module that we manufacture and sell to our customers, manufacturers of different light fixtures. These radio modules are really well designed. Years of development are put into these, and they have a high output power, they have a great sensitivity, and they're certified for usage in pretty much every country around the world. They're developed by us, they're manufactured here in Sweden, and we use them ourselves in our own products. We use these radio modules, but we also sell them to the OEM customers. They purchase the modules from us to build into their fixtures. And over time, well, there's a bunch of different fixtures. So there's both moving heads and film lights and panel lights and tube lights and all kinds of different fixtures integrating our radio modules. All kind of different mixed brands. There are now over 200 brands that have integrated our wireless DMX into the fixtures. And it is compatible across all these brands because the radio technology used is CRMX, it's from us. So all these different fixtures are compatible. They receive the same data in the same way exactly the same way because we output it the same way in our modules. These are some of the larger manufacturers. There's very few manufacturers that do not offer Lumen Radio Wireless DMX. Very few. So most brands support it, and this makes it possible for the user to operate any kind of brand with wireless DMX using a transmitter that has CRMX in it. So what we typically on a setup, you have a mix of brands. You're not able to choose. You get some fixtures or you see what's available, and they might have multiple brands. You're not stuck with one brand, but you're using a lot of different brands. And CRMX is still the technology that is working with all the brands at the same time. So regardless if you have an Aperture or an ARRI, or if you're going to use some Astera today, they will be compatible. Everything will work. Everything will have the wireless system. You just need your transmitter and everything is compatible. Because as we know, typically you have a mix of equipment. You will not be stuck with one specific brand using their proprietary technology. You will have different. And this is where CRMX comes in to be the standard when it comes to wireless. If you're using wireless DMX, you are using our technology. You can control all the brands, and it makes the life so much easier for the users. We do the wireless link between everything. So it's the same DMX signal across all the different receivers. You can mix different flavors of fixtures, and they will all be able to be controlled from one device. And RDM is working as well. So part of CRMX is RDM. So you have wireless RDM and wired RDM as well. So this cross compatibility really helps out in most cases where you have a mixed environment. And the control option, well, that's up to the user. Like, how do they want to control the fixtures? Do they use a GrandMA, or do they use a Wolfmix, or do they use blackout lighting console on an iPad? It's up to the user to choose their control options. We support a lot of different ones, and then we can output the signal with wireless DMX, a wireless link to all the fixtures, depending on what they think is reasonable. So when the benefits of using CRMX or wireless DMX is that we focus a lot on the user workflow. They should not be hindered in their creativity by cables. So we try to make it more flexible for the users. Being able to position lights as they want or move them around as they want. They should be easier to work with. Quick setup of devices. You don't have to run the cables. You can even have it done with a pre-rig so that your lights are actually connected and working. Just power it up or have a battery powered light and it just works without having to run any cables. Redundancy. You can actually have multiple wireless links easy. I'll show you how to do that. And you can have shoots on different places. If you have a film crew that's shooting some parts in a location and some parts in a sound stage or something, we can move the equipment between, and it still works even with different locations. And at the same time coexist with others. We don't want to interfere any other wireless systems, and we do that. We stay away from the others, and we can even block certain parts that we're not allowed to be in. So there are a lot of benefits when it comes to wireless DMX, we focus on the workflow of the user, how to make it easy for them, how to be as creative as possible and not having to consider the cabling infrastructure. So let's dig into the products, what to use, when to use, what kind of products do we have, what target audience do we have for the different products, what's the use case and so on. And we'll go through all that we have right now. So, with the products, when do we need to use them? Not every single case is reasonable to use wireless DMX. Of course, we understand that. So when do we have this benefit for the user? When do people really need it? Where's the easiest sell of these products? The most common one is the flexibility. You don't want to plan specifically where everything needs to be placed. You don't have to consider the cabling. You can move things around as you might need. You perhaps don't know what the situation will be like when you get there on set or whatever. So the flexibility, being able to place lights where you really want them, move them around if you want to, that's a really important part of when people want to use it, when they want to be flexible. Perhaps even using a wireless lighting setup as well, so it can actually move the complete structure of everything. Time constraints is another. You can't shut down a road forever. So if you really quickly want to work with the lighting, getting everything up and running quickly, then wireless is so much faster than using a cable. You basically place the lights there and they're working. So if you have a time constraint, then working with wireless is so much quicker. You can even make sure everything is linked before getting there. So you just put up the light and it works. If you have a structure like this where you want to light it up, you're not able to run a cable to the structure. So you need to get the signal there in another way. And that's when wireless comes in. So because of you can't get a cable there, well, of course, there's a reason to go wireless. Cost reduction, doing renovations of a hotel, putting facade lighting out there in the garden. It's expensive to do digging. It's expensive to run new cables inside a building as well. So there are many reasons for doing cost reduction, where you, instead of using existing unknown infrastructure or trying to run new cables, you simply use a wireless option instead. Aesthetics, when you don't want to see the cables, you're not allowed to show any kind of infrastructure where it's supposed to be nice and clean. Well, of course it's wireless then. At church, if you have a ceremony, you don't want to see the DMX cables lying on the floor, you do it wirelessly. And movement, of course, if you're going to move lights around. Tubes, anyone? So if you're going to move a light in any way, well, of course it needs to be wireless. This is a really easy sell as well. So moving the light around, having the flexibility of moving them wherever you want them, not being limited by cables. These are typical use cases where people really need wireless and want to use it. So what are they going to use? Let's dig in a bit into the product lineup as it is today. The Lumen Radio products that we have for film, for stage, when you need a wireless network. So, first out is Stardust, of course. This is Stardust. It's an 8 universe wireless DMX transmitter. It supports Ethernet, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth's on the way, and you can the data you can send to it is streaming ACN, ArtNet, and also RDM over ArtNet. It supports all the protocols, transmits CRMX, CRMX squared, WDMX G3, WDMX G4S, and you can power it with AC power, as we've done today. It actually has a built-in backup battery as well, so it will keep running for about half an hour if the power is disconnected. It also supports DC power with a barrel plug, and also power over Ethernet. This device supports 8 universes of CRMX squared or 4 universes when using CRMX classic WDMX protocols. It has, as most products do, a 3.8 and an M10 socket for attaching to different accessories or clamps or whatever you might need. So depending on the market, you might want a M10 or a 3.8, different ones. And it also features a built-in web server. So inside Stardust, there's a web server that you can access through any device. Your laptop, your phone, your tablet, where you can do all the kind of configuration. And since it has a Wi-Fi, it can act as an access point. You can connect directly using an iPad to Stardust. And simply by surfing to stardust.local, you will get a web interface with all the functionalities of Stardust. You will see the frequency spectrum, you'll have all the different fancy features in here, channel blocking, linking key, everything is in the web interface, all the settings, the universe mappings. You can do most of the settings on the front panel as well. It's a rotatable knob and push button. And if you need to perform a firmware update, that's when you use the USB port. The USB port is only activated once you do a firmware upgrade, so you can't connect your phone to charge it or anything there. The USB port is only for firmware update. Our next device is Aurora. It's a single universe transceiver, a flex unit, so you can choose to operate it as a transmitter or a receiver. It supports 1 universe of transmissions or receiving. It supports receiving of all the protocols, CRMX Classic, CRMX Squared, WDMX, all the protocols. It has on this device we have XLR connectors for DMX cables. We also have a 5 GHz Wi-Fi interface, making it possible to use any Wi-Fi based devices to stream ACN or ARPANET directly to this box to then go wireless DMX out. The Wi-Fi is only usable as when it is a transmitter, so it can transmit. When it's a transmitter, you can use streaming ACN or ARPANET. If you're just receiving, then there's no Wi-Fi. It supports the same thing. It has the same features as Stardust when it comes to mounting option with 3.8 and M10. It has DC power, AC power, but there is no battery backup. It supports wireless RDM, both transmission and receiving. The next device is Luna, our most basic receiver or transmitter box. It has, same as Aurora, it has Bluetooth. It does not have Wi-Fi. You configure it with, well, the button, but more conveniently using the app, the CRMX Toolbox app to configure it. We have the 3.8 and M10s, of course. We have the DC power, we have the AC power, and the XLR connectors for your DMX data. So this is a transmitter or receiver, you choose freely. It supports RDM as a receiver. It cannot transmit RDM. But this one, if you connect it, for instance, with a tablet using the Bluetooth connection, you will have wireless DMX and you will have wired DMX output as well. So this, together with basic apps that support our Bluetooth protocol, is actually your complete control solution. After Luna, we have Moonlight, the problem solver, the Swiss Army. This is a battery-powered device, so it contains a rechargeable battery. It can act as a transmitter with wireless RDM or a receiver. It has a micro USB port for charging, and the battery will last for about 10 hours when it's a receiver, a few hours when it's a transmitter. Pigtail connector here for DMX in and out. Conveniently placed like this, so that when you attach it to a fixture, the device typically hangs down a bit beneath the fixture so you can get a better signal. The configuration of this device can be done using the button, but we also recommend to use the app. So the CRMX Toolbox app, you will configure it to transmit what protocol do you want. It supports WDMX and CRMX, and it can receive all the protocols. So it can receive all the CRMX and all the WDMX protocols when it's a receiver. Really good problem solver. If you just need a wireless link somewhere, it's battery powered, just power it up, hook it up somewhere and link it, and all of a sudden you have a wireless link, either just replacing a single cable or part of a larger network. Something you should keep in your pocket basically all the time. Then we have the products for fixed installations. These are quite new. So for any kind of event where you have an installation that is going to sit there for quite some time, these are products that are designed for that. We'll start out with Galileo TX. Looks like this. It's a transmitter only. It has a DIN rail mount, meaning that it's possible to mount it in electrical cabinets using the same form factor. It's powered with DC, 12 to 24 volts, which is typically found in these cabinets. So you might even have power already. It has a DMX input, three wires on a pluggable strip. So you connect the DMX, you connect the DC power, and you're good to go. It comes with a RP SMA antenna that you can detach and use one of the accessories to have another different antenna if you need. Quite small in size, might need additional equipment to be a part of a complete system, such as a Pharos controller next door or something else. It also comes in a flavor of Galileo RX, which is a receiver device. It looks the exact same. It supports DMX and RDM. You use Bluetooth to configure it with the app. And it also features an in-app repeater upgrade, which means that any receiver can be upgraded to become a repeater. So the same physical device can be a receiver, but if you realize in your installation that you might need a repeater, you can take any receiver, simply use the app to upgrade it into a repeater mode. The repeater will add 5 milliseconds latency, and that's it. You're also able to add multiple repeater hops, so that if you have a very long stretch of road or something, you can use multiple Galileo RX as repeaters, repeater, repeater, and so on. Same features otherwise with a form factor and with a DIN rail form factor, DC power, and a DMX output instead. So Galileo comes in TX and RX. Now we're going to talk about the WDMX products. So this is a new line of products that we're introducing to make wireless more easy to use. These are devices for people that don't work perhaps with lights on a daily basis, but it's rather sort of part of their other job. They might be working as a DJ or event planner or something where you want a wireless connectivity, but you need it to be really, really easy to use. You don't require any configuration or RDM. These are products that are quick and easy to use, very affordable, light it up like a pro, wireless made easy. These are what we have here. This is the Orb. Orb is available in two versions, Orb TX, Orb RX, a transmitter or receiver. The transmitter will always use WDMX G3. The reason for that protocol is because it is widely supported. It's been around for much longer. It is not as good as CRMX, but all equipment that is produced by Lumen Radio since very early has actually been supporting WDMX G3 as well. So this is compatible with almost everything that is out there, both WDMX and Lumen Radio products. So we believe that this will be very compatible with most equipment out there. That's why we choose WDMX G3 on this version. It is not as reliable as CRMX, but for this use case, we believe it is definitely good enough. As a receiver, it will receive all the protocols, all the WDMX and the CRMX protocols. The Orb, it features a USB-C port for power, DMX connector for your cables, and also a link button. Simply power it up. You can press the link button and you're good to go. And it comes in two flavors, either transmitter or a receiver. And it also has a mounting bracket for truss or clamps. Together with the Orb, we also have the Stick. The Stick is a plug-in receiver, and it comes only as a receiver. It receives a full universe of wireless DMX from both WDMX and CRMX equipment. It has a USB-C port for power, and it has a link button to unlink it. So hold down the button and unlink it. That's what you can do with it. Zero configuration. You can unlink it. That's what you can do. You power it up and it's good to go. This one has lost the link. Let's unlink it. And now it's unlinked, waiting to be connected. It does not have a built-in battery. You need to feed it with USB-C from either the fixture or an external power supply. The antenna of this device is located near the tip here, and it is radiating in all kind of directions. Since it will most likely sit in the back of a fixture, then you need to consider that the fixture might block certain parts of the device. The range of this is lower, of course, if you compare it to a box with a real antenna, but the range is still really long. In the outdoor environment, our boxes can do 1,000 meters. The Moonlight can do moonlight to moonlight, several hundred meters as well, actually. This one will probably be less than the Moonlight, but still we're talking about ranges in the outdoor in the hundreds meters, yeah, at least. And of course we have some accessories for all these products as well, depending on what you need. For all the products we have antennas of different flavors, directional, omnidirectional, different gains and beamforms, all the extension cables you might need if you need to run the antenna a few meters away, all the adapters you might need to connect the devices. The antenna cables we supply are thick because that's what you should be using, so no thin antenna cables. These can be attached to all the products depending on with some adapters perhaps or not, depending on what the product is, but these are available for all the products. Some Product-specific accessories are for the film stage boxes, or the TNG as we call them. We have a rack mount. See here? We have the rack mount. This rack mount is for Stardust. You attach it to the side using the chassis screws, and the patch cables will be used for the rear antennas to be on the front of the rack. So you will have, when using this rack mount, you will have 4 antennas in the front from a Stardust. This is Stardust rack mount. The Luna and Aurora also has a rack mount, but without the antenna patch cables. We also have a wall mount. Very easy. Attached to the side of the box, screw it to the wall. Easy. There's also a yoke mount. It looks like this, for Stardust only. The yoke mount allows you to use the M10 and the 3/8 inch to screw Stardust in. You can tilt it all the way down to mount it on a tripod. That's the yoke mount. We also have, for all the boxes, we have a V-Lock battery mount. Attaches to the side of the box, which makes it possible to, using the DC power plug, use any V-Lock battery to power your device for many hours to be completely wireless. We don't provide the batteries, of course. V-Lock batteries are available everywhere, but the V-Lock battery mount attaches to the side and connects to your device. For the Galileo, we have accessories that are usable for fixed installations. There's an enclosure, an IP67 rated enclosure with an N-type antenna connector on top, same as we use for our outdoor boxes today. We have a vandal-proof cover, making it possible to completely shield in the product, not accessible to push any buttons or unscrew the antenna or anything. We have the chassis cable if you just want to connect an antenna to any kind of chassis. And also puck antenna, which is a small antenna that is IP rated that you can attach to an electrical cabinet and then have a 1 meter cable attaching directly to the device. The Vandal complete kit looks like this. This is your Vandal protection. It's not possible to access any part of the device when this is mounted on. If you unscrew the lid, you will see the internal contents of the cover. This is the IP67 rated box with antenna connector on top. Inside we have the Galileo and a power supply, 15 watts. And the antenna can of course be exchanged to whatever you might like. This enclosure also fits for the new Galileo Max that will be presented later on. Available as a complete kit with everything or as individual parts. And we also have, of course, a bunch of legacy products that are still around. These are products that you might come across. The outdoor flex units, the slim units, the white box. And we also have the black box, the micro box, the Nova series, if you know it's called Nova. That's what the old Lumen Radio boxes were called, the Nova series. And also the Pro box. So we have a lot of legacy equipment out there. And that is why it's important that we're backwards compatible. We will still be compatible with all these equipment. You can use our new devices. You can mix new and old, and depending on what is supported, you can choose the different protocols. So some of these products are still available, and most important, they're still compatible since way back in 2005. So these are boxes you might come across, and we're still compatible with them. All right, that was the product. Let's dig into the features, how to use them, go through some of the basic operations, and also a bit more technical into what the features do. So we have to start with the basics, the common basics. That we do have some different protocols, and this is important to know. Of course, we have CRMX and WDMX. You've heard that about now, but there are also others. There are these protocols, but we also have the other more proprietary protocols. We have CD Theatrical. We have some color-coded, which are commonly called the color-coded. We have some brand proprietary as well, the eFly and DFly, and so on, that not in any way are compatible with the Lumen Radio protocols. We can't support them in our devices, and they are not compatible in any way. So WDMX and CRMX, those are the ones we own and support all over. CRMX is also the most widely used one, and it is by far the most reliable. You may come across the other protocols, you may have tested them, or you have users that have tested them, And it's important for them to understand that there's a real difference with CRMX compared to many of the others. And throughout history, there have been so many protocols. There have been generations of boxes. There have been protocol generations as well. So we have the G3. We've chosen that to be part of our transmissions because it was the first, it is the most widely adopted, is really widely adopted, but it is not as good. We do have the G4S, which added the RDM features as well. That's why we support G4S as well. We have CRMX Classic, also called CRMX. It's what we've been using since day one at Lumen Radio, supported by everything that we've ever produced. We have CRMX Squared, which I'll explain more about soon, which is a new protocol developed by Lumen Radio. The new equipment that we produce, they can receive all the protocols, even the WDMX G2, the G4, the G5, whatever you might have. Everything that we produce now, all the radio modules, all the products can receive all the CRMX and the WDMX protocols. And that includes OEM customers as well. We use the same hardware. Older equipment that we might have, the Nova boxes or an older black box or similar, they might be limited, or they are limited. They are not able to support these. Even with updates, we can't get support for these, for all the protocols. That is why we instead added support for more protocols in all the new products. The features of CRMX. CRMX is a wireless DMX protocol, and there are some features that are good to know about how we make the link reliable and workable and all of this. So there is a fixed 5 millisecond latency that we have from end to end. So from the point of the data coming in to the transmitter to the point where it is received and output on a cable or output into the fixture, that's fixed 5 millisecond always for all the devices. It has the same synchronized data across all the receivers. So if you have 100 receivers, they will receive the same data at the same time. This is because we have this star network, as we discussed earlier. The signal comes to everyone at the same time. The error correction is built in, of course, so that we can restore broken packages, partly broken packages. The signal can drop down without affecting the actual DMX flow. So we can repair broken packages that we receive. That's part of the CRMX protocol. And we have a frame integrity that always ensures that you get a full frame, no half frames. If a frame is broken or if we just receive half a frame, we will not output that on the cable. The link is encrypted with 128 bits. No one is able to access your network or control your devices. The encryption is initiated by the transmitter, and this is part of linking key as well. It is future-proof, because we make sure that we upgrade it with new features that users need. We add more features that users require and benefit from, but we always make sure that it's backwards compatible. So even the new devices should be compatible with everything we ever produced. We have universe color and universe naming. When you use a Moonlight, you only have an LED to show what universe you're linked to if you're using multiple universes. So Luna and Moonlight will indicate it with a LED. If you have a more advanced device, you will be able to read the universe name. So even on OEM devices, you can read the universe name that is linked to on the display. So what is then CRMX Squared? We've had this question a lot. What is it? So we released CRMX Squared at the same time as we released Stardust. Stardust can transmit CRMX Squared, and it's currently the only device that can do it. What it does, it transmits 2 universes of CRMX across the radio link. So it transmits 2 universes for each radio link or for each antenna. The receivers will only receive one of these universes. There is a minor difference in range, so if you're really pushing the limits, CRMX will have a slightly longer range, or CRMX Classic as we call it to differentiate. CRMX Classic will have a slightly longer range than CRMX Squared. And it is important to know that if you're using Stardust and sending out 8 universes, that is a lot harder on the radio environment than just sending out 1. So it will always be easier to use a single universe box if you want to have a stable signal and only require 1 universe. So CRMX2, it is only the ability to transmit 2 universes over one radio link. All the other features of CRMX is also part of this. CRMX Squared was introduced when we released Stardust, and we also added this, of course, to all the radio modules. They're all compatible and can support this. However, there are millions of devices out there in the market that doesn't support it unless you update the firmware. When we released Stardust, this was added to all the radio modules. And so any device produced since about 2015 can be updated to support CRMX Squared. However, we are not aware of how the manufacturers actually have implemented our firmware update process. So you need to reach out to the manufacturer of specific devices if you want to do a firmware update to support CRMX Squared when it comes to OEM fixtures. All the Lumen Radio products support CRMX Squared if they're not too old. The Nova boxes, they are too old. They will not support CRMX Squared, hence we have CRMX Classic available. You can use CRMX Squared on all 4 antennas, on all 4 radio modules, then you will have 8 universes. But you can also mix with a bit of Classic and a bit of CRMX Squared, so that you can have, for instance, 7 universes. 6 of them being CRMX Squared, and 1 being CRMX Classic for some legacy products that cannot support CRMX Squared yet. If you try to link a device using CRMX Squared, it sees that a linking process is going on, but it will fail. Then it doesn't support CRMX Squared, and you have to revert to Classic instead. When using Classic on all 4 antennas, you will have 4 universes. Wireless RDM is part of CRMX, so it is possible to use any kind of RDM controller to monitor your fixtures. You can patch and configure devices just as you can with regular RDM, and you can do it wirelessly as well. But you can also monitor the received signal. So you can see from the controller point of view, you will be able to see what kind of signal has been received on the receiver side instead. This is really good for monitoring your environment or your fixtures. And wireless RDM is part of CRMX, so you can use it with pretty much all of the transmitters. Luna does not support wireless RDM transmissions, but the other boxes do. So, features, linking, the linking concept. If you have worked with wireless DMX before, this is really easy. If you haven't, this is what it does. So linking is a process of connecting 2 devices or many devices together. And this is a process. So if you start with a single universe linking process, the linking is typically operated by pressing a button. The linking is always initiated from the transmitters. When you push the button, it will connect and link to any receiver within range that is unlinked. So the receivers that you want to connect to this transmitter, they need to be unlinked and sort of available, free to be connected. So when you push the button, you will send out a message to all the receivers in range that you want to link them. So the process of linking, let's say you have 5 receivers and 1 transmitter. The process is that you make sure that the 5 receivers are unlinked. That can often be done by holding down the button on the receiver or through a menu item, but they need to be unlinked first. Then you go to the transmitters. You press the button and then it's done. That's all you need to do. Then all the receivers that are unlinked and within range will be connected to the transmitter. The unlinking can be called unlink, reset, clear sometimes. Depends on how the implementation is. So that's how you link a single universe device. If you have multiple universes, if we have a Stardust for instance, then we don't have a link button, but instead we have a menu system, which allow us to go to linking. And the linking part of the menu shows the different outputs we have enabled. So on this device, we're using 4 universes, and we go to the specific output we want to use. Output A, which is this antenna. And there we have the link and the unlink options. We simply press link, and now I will connect all the devices. So you can see a Stardust with 8 universes or 4 has then 8 different options of linking. So when you want to establish a link, you go to the output you want to link on, and you press the corresponding menu item. So when you want to link a device, it is initiated by the transmitter by pushing a button. The protocol used is decided by the transmitter. So whatever you set the transmitter up to is what is going to be used. If you set it up as a CRMX transmitter, the devices will switch into that. If it's a WDMX, you will switch into that, depending of course how compatible the receivers are. So you select the mode on the transmitter, and the receiver, you don't do anything. It will automatically change into the protocol that a transmitter is using. So you can use your favorite transmitter to link your devices. The data sources that you can use on our devices, well, it varies what kind of control options you want. You can use the XLR connector to feed DMX data right into the box. It can be from your console or from your converter, whatever. You can feed to many of the boxes. They all have different data options. You can use Bluetooth as well. Our radio module TMO2 that is used in all our products and a lot of OEM customers, it has a Bluetooth interface which allows you to transmit DMX over Bluetooth. You can use Wi-Fi to streaming ACN or ARTNet from a tablet directly to some of the boxes. And you can also use Ethernet for the same purpose to transmit ACN or ARTNet to some of the boxes. So the boxes all have different sort of data source options. What we do is we always take in this data, convert it into DMX, wireless DMX, and transmit. So what we transmit is always wireless DMX. On the other end, you will get DMX. The conversion from ARTNet or from streaming ACN is set up in the boxes, so they act as a converter. So the range of CRMX, that is still always the long range, the hundreds of meters, no problem. But when you use Bluetooth or when you use Wi-Fi, that has a limited range, which you should know. This is not a powerful Wi-Fi router. It has a Wi-Fi interface, but it's not designed to cover large areas. So the Bluetooth and the Wi-Fi interface will typically have a range of 10 to 20 meters. So you need to stay nearby the box. The Bluetooth and the Wi-Fi are not at all as stable as a CRMX link. When it comes to the link quality, you should never settle for average. This is your margin of error, because if you have a poor link or an average link when setting up and you think you're done, well, that's your room for problems. If something unexpected occurs, if there's a new wireless camera coming in, or someone sets up an access point, or the crowd has a lot of interference with them, then this signal quality will degrade and you will have problems. So don't settle for average. Try to make as good signal as possible with the tools that you have until before you take a break. So make sure that the signals are good where you need them. Know your weak spots, because perhaps not all the lights will have a perfect signal, but does it really matter? Know your weak spots and know your limits so that you can know in beforehand that the static lights over there, they might not work as good as the moving heads nearby. So test your system, run chases, run dynamic changes to see if you have any sort of weak spots in your systems. Use wireless RDM to see the radio signals, check the boxes, make sure that you have a good signal where you need it. Because if you know your weak spots and if you know your limits, you can sort of stay within those boundaries. If you expect everything to be flawless, then you have to make sure that it is flawless and more before you have the event starting. The Bluetooth interface of our devices, as I mentioned, TMO2 has a Bluetooth interface, and it's used by OEM customers, ourselves, and it is possible to do many things with this. We have an app called CRMX Toolbox, which we'll show you soon. In there you can configure your device. So you can configure a Moonlight or a Luna or other devices. You can set them as TX, RX, you can link, unlink, change the output power, change the protocols, change linking key is done within this app. You can do upgrades such as the repeater in there. You can do a firmware update, and you can do a firmware update of our devices, but also the radio module inside customer fixtures, OEM customer fixtures. You can update our radio module's firmware using the Toolbox app. So we can configure, that's one part you can do, but you can also transmit DMX data over this Bluetooth interface. We will convert the data coming over Bluetooth into a wireless DMX signal and also wired on the outputs. And it's supported by 3 apps right now: Luminaire, Blackout Lighting Console, and Stage Light, where you directly in the app just connect to a supported device. Any device with TMO2 is supported by, can do these things. So basically in the app you can just choose connect Bluetooth and choose your radio module that you want to send DMX data to. So your Moonlight together with an iPad can be a complete lighting setup. Bluetooth DMX is limited in refresh rate because the bandwidth of Bluetooth is not high enough for a full universe of changes. So if you want to do a lot of changes on multiple channels, then you need to switch from Bluetooth to something else. So there are some limitations in this, which you will see depending on how many changes you do at the same time. Linking key is a feature that we introduced when we released the TNG boxes. Linking key is available in all the new products. Also with OEMs, they can use this feature. Typically, when you do a linking process, you push the button and then the encrypted key is sent out to all the receivers. What linking key does is that you can change this key into your own specified key. This means that you can effectively create clones of devices. You can link from the receiver side suddenly, and you can also do a lot of preparations in advance. So it is a powerful feature when you have the need for it. If you don't need linking key, then there's no reason for you to use it. The signal doesn't change, the encryption isn't better or anything. So every device has a unique key stored in it. This key is, by default, that's how we link devices. The default key is sent out to the receivers, and the receivers will listen to this key only. However, if you want to create a clone, you want a redundant device next to it, you can enter the linking key in device A, you can enter the same key in device B. And the receiver will not see the difference. It will listen to a specific key. So if you have the same key in two devices, the receiver will listen to both. That means that if you have a receiver that can listen to two transmitters with the same key, it will work very poorly. It will not be good at all. The behavior is undefined. You will see flickers, you will see broken stuff. So a receiver should never be able to hear two devices with the same linking key at the same time. It's more useful if you have two separate locations. You want to use the same equipment on a set, perhaps on location, perhaps in different places. You want the same equipment to be linked in the same way, but using different transmitters. Or perhaps you have a rigging crew that will put up the equipment using one of their Stardusts. Then you can come in with your own Stardust mapped up with all your rest of your equipment, use the same key, and everything is just linked. You can also enter the key on the receivers, which will allow them to then listen to that specific key, effectively linking from a receiver side instead. So either you use the factory default key, which is stored inside, or you can specify your own key that will be used for transmission. And it's important to know that when you change the key, all the linked devices are not automatically unlinked. So if you want to change from the default key into your own user specified key, then you need to unlink them first, set the key, then link. It's very good to use linking key for fixed installations. For instance, if you have a Galileo installation, if you're using linking key, then you can easily swap out the transmitter if the transmitter should break down. So having a key as part of the project files is really good when you're doing a fixed installation. Channel blocking is a feature of Stardust where you can tell the CRMX algorithm, our transmissions, to stay away from certain parts of the spectrum. Someone might tell you you have to stay away from specific parts. You are not allowed to be in specific parts of the spectrum. There's no reason to use it unless instructed, because it reduces the efficiency of the system. So typically Stardust scans the whole 2.4 spectrum, trying to find the best possible channels to use. It is possible in the web interface to block certain parts of the spectrum to not be used. It will of course make Stardust run in a more limited space trying to find reasonable channels. So you will reduce the efficiency of the system by using channel blocking. It can be used for RF planning. If you have devices that are set in specific parts of the spectrum, then you can use channel blocking. You can, in the web interface of Stardust, this is available, and it looks like this. You can choose to block either Wi-Fi channels 1 to 12. You can choose to block individual frequencies, just one frequency at a time. Or you can also choose from our predefined list of systems. This will make it easier for the users. If they know that there's another wireless system that they're operating near and they're having issues, they can simply choose in the drop-down list what kind of system that they're having issues with and what kind of settings that system has. So here we have an example. We have a Preston G4, and on the Preston G4 system, the user might have specified channel 7 or 37. So instead of the user having to figure out the frequencies and so on, you simply select the system and what channel they're using, and you add it to the blocking, and we'll stay away from that. So the frequency mapping is done by us. If you have other systems that you think is reasonable to add in here, then please drop us an email. We'll try to add them if it is possible to block that system as well. As you add more frequencies to block, there's a bar that will be reduced as you add more systems, and eventually you cannot block any more systems because we need some space to operate. You can't just block the whole spectrum and force Stardust to operate on 2 channels. That is not possible. It will not work then. So once you've added too many things to too many other systems to your channel blocking, you'll be notified that you can't block anymore. Firmware update can be done on our boxes. Everything can be firmware update. There are many ways to do it. What we always recommend is using CRMX Toolbox. Anything that has a Bluetooth support can be updated using the CRMX Toolbox with the latest firmware. For Stardust, you need to use a USB stick and download the image because the firmware is so large it cannot be transferred over Bluetooth. It would take many hours. And for equipment that doesn't have a USB port or doesn't have the Bluetooth interface, you need to use the CRMX upgrade cable. This is a USB to 5-pin XLR that you can connect to different devices, even OEM customers' devices. But it depends on the implementation when it comes to OEM customers, how you can access the firmware upgrade. We have a tool on our web page. All the firmware files are available through our support pages. You can use the firmware upgrade cable, you can use the Bluetooth interface, and there are also other methods where you can do it wirelessly. However, this is a bit tricky, and that is why we recommend that you contact us if you wish to do this. So if you have a bunch of fixtures that you need to update that you can't do with Bluetooth, you can't use the upgrade cable, then talk with us and we'll send you instructions how to do it wirelessly as well. Now we've seen a bit about the different features that we have, not all of them, but some of the more basic, not all of them, but some of the more advanced features and how to use them. We'll not go through setting up Wi-Fi access points or configuring ArtNet. That is quite intuitive when you use the box. So try it out yourself instead. There are some product-specific details. For instance, the apps. We have a bunch of apps. If you search for Lumen Radio, you will find a bunch of apps. If you go for CRMX, you will find a few as well. So we have the CRMX Toolbox that we've had around for a few years. We have the WDMX configurator that has been used for WDMX products. Those are the 2 apps that we had before. Now we have released CRMX Toolbox 2. It is the one app that can do everything these 2 apps can do together, and will be able to do more. So you can do all the configuration, firmware update, you can unlock CRMX for Blackbox G6, you can unlock repeater mode in Galileo, and we're also able to add more features into this new app. So expect it to have more. Right now it has the same feature set as the old app. We have not removed the old apps. They will be around until the new app works perfectly. And we'll continue to add features to this new app as we see fit. So the CRMX Toolbox 2 is available now on App Store and Google Play. And it looks like this. Now we've gone through the features and how to use the product a bit more, and now we're going to go into troubleshooting, how to be able to trust your systems, know how to find the problems, how to break it and how to fix it. This is crucial if you want to be able to trust your system. So troubleshooting, yes, shit happens, we know that, and we want you to know your limits and how to fix problems. This is important to convey to the users that know how to fix any potential problems. We do have a Facebook group called Wireless DMX Users. There's about 7,000 members there right now discussing usage of professional wireless DMX on a daily basis. All kinds of questions comes up there, and we're part of the discussions as well, helping out with the right answer and showing what can be done and so on. So that's really good for you and for your users to be part of the users group. Breaking your equipment, it is possible. It's hard though. What you should not do is touch the center pin of your device. The center pin. The outer part is of course grounded. But on the boxes you will see a small center pin on all our devices. And if you're charged with ESD from walking around or whatever, and you manage to touch that center pin is connected directly to the radio sensitive parts. So if you zap it, you might break your equipment. So don't touch the center pin. That's easy. Don't touch it. Just leave it alone. That's also why you should keep the antenna on, because then it's protected. You can't touch the center pin. Moonlight is a really good tool. It gets thrown around a lot, and you shouldn't pull the cables too much, because eventually the connector will come loose on the inside. So if you keep pulling Moonlight for some reason, we don't know why, eventually the connector might come loose inside. So don't do that. The USB connector, over time, micro USB connectors, if you hammer them down, they might be worn out as well. Our devices are perfectly fine to operate without an antenna. There are many devices out there that requires an antenna, otherwise it'll sort of burn up inside. That's fine for our devices. We don't have that high output power, so that's fine. But for the reason of ESD on the center pin, use an antenna. You can unpower the devices at any time when they're running or whatever. That works fine. It won't break. And also firmware update is really stable. So if you do a firmware update and halfway through your phone shuts down or something, that's fine. You just start it again. This goes for all the devices. It will, if the firmware update is unsuccessful, it will enter a firmware update mode and just wait for the firmware to be updated again, even over the Bluetooth interface. So it's perfectly safe to update the firmware. If something happens, you should always still be able to update the firmware. Just try it again. If you use the app to update firmware and something breaks, then the app might think the device has a new firmware. In fact, it doesn't. But it's always possible in the app to press update firmware. Even though it's grayed out, you can force an update by just pressing the button, even though it seems to be unavailable. So if you press the firmware update button, it will start the process once again. So you can, even if you have the latest firmware and want to reflash it for some reason, you can do that by just pressing the firmware update button again. Wireless DMX signal issues. They're always quite easy to spot. Either there's a delay or a latency, a stutter in the dynamics, it's not smooth, there's sort of packages missing. Or you might have a signal dropout occasionally, or a short range. So we'll try to figure out what's going on here. Very common is what people call a latency, or not smooth changes. So a transmitter, this is sort of DMX packages being sent out by the transmitter. It continuously sends out DMX frames over and over and over all the time, whatever is fed to it. Even if you don't feed the transmitter with a DMX, it will still have an active radio link, but the receiver will say, oh, there's no DMX on the radio link. But as soon as you feed the transmitter with DMX data, it will output these in frame by frame over and over and over all the time. When the signal starts to drop, when you get a poor signal, some packages will be lost in the air due to the poor conditions. We will repair broken packages, but at some extent we can't repair, they're too broken, and there will be frames that are gone. The broken frames are not sent out, of course, on the DMX, but there will be no frame coming out instead. So the fixture will get most of the DMX frames, but there will be some that are just plain missing. When you drop down the signal even more, that's when you get to see the latency, the stutters, and so on, because the transmitter will keep sending packages, but the receiver will only occasionally receive a working frame, a full frame that is correct and everything. That means that the receiver will get a frame perhaps once every second, or once every 5 seconds. When the conditions are so poor that the receiver can only get a frame from time to time, that's when you will start to see stutter in dynamics, that things are moving not as smooth. You will see a latency because you make a change on the control desk, the change is immediately sent to the transmitter sends it out immediately. However, the receiver just hears broken packages for a long time until finally it can receive with a very weak signal a fully working package, and then it will send it to the fixture. So that's when you see delay. It's caused by a poor signal being received. When you have a signal dropout, it can be sudden, or it can be when you have a sudden dropout of signals. It's often caused by another wireless system suddenly transmitting, an intercom system, or something that is not continuously transmitting, but something that just occasionally transmits a lot and then becomes quiet again. That's often the cause when you have a dropout from time to time, that everything looks fine, and then every 10 seconds or so, or when someone talks on the walkie-talkie, you will see zip, drop it down. That's often caused by other wireless systems suddenly transmitting. Short range, that can be affected by, that can be the cause from either transmitter or receiver point of view. We'll talk a bit about short range here. So when you have a wireless DMX problem, first of all the receivers are affected, or is it a single receiver? So if everything's affected, then of course it's something with the transmitter. Well, not of course, but most likely it's something related to the transmitter. Try to find a better location for the transmitter. Is it close to grounded metal? Is it standing on top of a cable coil? Have you elevated it above head height? Check the output power. Perhaps someone has set the output power to minimum. Make sure that that's correct. And check the antennas, because it is possible to break the antennas. Swap it out to see if it makes any difference. If you can change into another transmitter, that's also a good idea. But if all the receivers are affected, then start looking at the transmitter side to see what's going on. If there's a single receiver instead that has a problem, well then of course we'll just focus on that receiver. The easiest thing often is to move it. Slightly move it. Just moving it slightly can definitely increase the received signal. Also here, review the antenna, make sure it's aligned in the right way, line of sight. Is it broken? Perhaps here. Try to replace the antenna. And if it's a box, if it's a fixture that you're using that has a poor signal, then perhaps you need to turn the fixture 180 degrees, or you can use a box instead of using the built-in receiver to have a better antenna solution. If it's a long distance or a really tough environment, you might need to do that. So, and if it's continuously all the time, then there's something in the environment. If it's suddenly, then perhaps there's another system that actually affects it. So another wireless system of some kind. So if it's continuously happens all the time, there's a poor signal all the time, perhaps it's a really hard radio environment. Perhaps there's other wireless systems interfering nearby. But if it's suddenly, then as I mentioned, it might be a cause of an intercom or some wireless system that is occasionally transmitting. Or perhaps when you power on some powerful PDU, then you might drop signals. If you have flicker should not occur. Sudden changes in all or single fixtures. If there's something, it goes dark, it goes bright. If there is a flicker, it should not occur. We don't do flickers. If you have a WDMX box running, one of the older protocols, disable Bluetooth, because that might actually cause it there. If you're using CRMX, then please let us know. Let us troubleshoot it, because it should never occur, a flicker. Flicker is really bad. When we investigate these things, we will ask you to reproduce it. We will try to reproduce it ourselves. And every time we found a flicker, we managed to, of course, eventually find the source of it. It's not something that we have currently. There are no flicker problems right now that we are aware of. We've seen over time, and very often these are caused by other things, but of course people consider the wireless link to be the cause because it's wireless and wireless doesn't work. So here again comes the trust. But if it flickers, we don't do flickers. We don't transmit half frames. We don't transmit all white as a frame or something like that. It's often the cause of something else. But together we can investigate and try to find problems if you see flickers. Of course, it can be RDM in some poor implementations, but that you already know of, RDM flickers. Bluetooth issues is a top problem on Moonlight, caused by the user, unfortunately, because it is possible on Moonlight to disable Bluetooth, which means that it'll work. You will have wireless DMX and wire DMX and everything, but you can't connect to it. You won't detect it. And it's quite easy to spot. On this device, I have disabled Bluetooth by I did it on purpose. So the first LED is solid. Nice, and that one is blinking. Yeah, everything looks great. But there is no blue LED blinking here. So if there's no blue LED blinking, if you can't see any blue colors, then the user has disabled Bluetooth. If they have a Bluetooth problem, just ask them, is there a blue LED blinking? If it's not, well, you have to check the user manual, because you won't remember this. But it's actually, I've written it here as well. So if the LEDs are off, now it's on, I will make sure that it's off actually. So you see here, press the link button once to wake up the device, press and release the button, and then press and hold the button. So basically, wake it up, press once, and then hold it down for 3 seconds. That should do it. Now it reboots, and it will start to blink blue here, I hope. Yeah, there you have the blue LED. So that is why it's a common problem, a common mistake to use it, because if you press the button, oh no, wait, I'm gonna hold it down to unlink. Well, then effectively you're doing the disabled Bluetooth sequence. So if the Bluetooth is not working, it says in the quick start guide of Moonlight how to fix it. But if CRMX is working, so is Bluetooth, because it is the same actual radio. DMX output issue, also on Moonlight. There's no output on the cables, but it works. You can link it and everything. The signal is good. Well, if there is no DMX coming out here, then someone has pulled the cables too much and eventually loosened the connector inside. So basically, you have to open it up, reattach the connector inside, and put it back together. In there somewhere. If the app behaves badly, if it shows the wrong firmware version, you can't do a firmware update the way you want, or it shows the wrong device or something. With both iOS and Android devices, the phone stores a lot of things in the cache. And when you have problems, you might see old cache information when you're trying to read out other information. So if the app is behaving badly, you need to clear the cache. And the easiest way we've found is to actually just reboot the phone. Sometimes Bluetooth is turned off, then you should turn it on. And firmware update. If it breaks, just try again. If your device breaks down and it just says update mode on the display, or it have some weird indications, just do a firmware upgrade. It will work to do a firmware upgrade, and it will be back to life again. When it comes to troubleshooting, what we always want to do when you talk to the customers and so on, always reproduce the error. Make sure that they can reproduce the error as well, because if we can't reproduce the error, it's impossible for us to even know how to cause the problem. Perform a firmware upgrade, because it might be something we have fixed recently. A lot of equipment is just using the old standard firmware that it was shipped with. We release new firmwares several times a year, so always perform a firmware upgrade if you have an issue. Check the antennas, make sure that the antennas are actually working, and swap devices. If you have a TX and it behaves badly, then swap it with a different TX to see if that's the problem. So swapping out devices. And once you've found out that this device or there's a bug or specific problem, once you've done the reproduction of error and can easily explain to us how you caused the problem, then please file a ticket. Use the support portal, support.lumenradio.com, and our support team is there answering, and we will always ask you, make sure you have updated the firmware and reproduced, how did you produce the error. So when you write a ticket, make sure you include that I've updated this firmware, I've done this, and this is not working. Then perhaps we can help you trying to find the problem. The only way to get support is using the support portal. You need to file a ticket there, and we'll get right onto it. The continued conversation can be either there or through email, but we need to have a ticket first to even start handling your support case. So that's how you fix problems. Now, how did they do it? Remember in the beginning, we saw this little London Eye with all the nice lights. How did they achieve this using wireless DMX? As you see, all the lights are spot on. It's so nice. London Eye. 100,000 watching live, millions watching online. They had a setup time of each pod that was around 60 seconds to load in the fixture, the power generator, the wireless receivers, all those things. They had 60 seconds because the wheel kept turning. It was even used throughout New Year's Eve, so they didn't have access to it until about, I don't know if it was a few hours before the show, where they needed to load up everything. So it just needed to work immediately. They had two Stardusts as transmitters for redundancy, so they were using linking key. They had the same linking key on both devices, but one of the Stardust had the antennas disconnected, because you can't use two transmitters with the same linking key in the same place. That will not work. So they had one Stardust there not being able to transmit, and one with antennas connected. And the antennas they used were connected with extension cables using 6 dBi antennas, which, as you remember from this guy, shape of an apple, 6 dBi, you squeeze it in to more like a shape of a donut or something, and they aimed the antennas with slightly different angles so that it will actually shoot in different segments of the London Eye. During the show, the eye was still, so they knew that, okay, the bottom ones will remain in that link throughout the whole show. They used 32 Auroras, one in each pod, and they used the regular 2 dBi antenna because they didn't have time to aim any antennas or such. They just made a rough aiming towards the ground level where they had the Stardust antennas. They used RDM for monitoring, so Stardust could monitor the receiver signals on all the boxes through their RDM controller, and performance was flawless. It was a bit nervous watching the show live from my home on New Year's Eve, but it looked brilliant. Of course, a lot of careful planning went into this. Another use case that we never speak of, we like to know more of, that we don't get any use cases from. So this use case is from Hollywood in the US. Pretty much every single movie production uses a lot of wireless lights. It's the way of working. It's part of the workflow. A lot of the products are designed in the mind of gaffers and people working with lights in the movie productions. Pretty much all the lights you use on a movie set contains radio modules from Lumen Radio. So it is the way of working. It is the way of controlling lights on a set. You have seen us definitely. We can't talk about it because we don't get the rights to talk about these use cases, but it is pretty much every single movie you see. From inside the lightsabers, where there's actually radio modules, to the heart of Iron Man, to virtual productions, The Mandalorian, to every single movie you basically see will contain a lot of wireless DMX supplied by us. They trust us to blow up a forest. They trust us to crash cars to make sure that the lights are working. And I think you can trust us as well. We did a use case in Zurich, in Switzerland, across Lake Zurich. We wanted to prove that you can use wireless DMX for long range as well. There's no real need for this. Perhaps why would you do it? Well, you can if you ever need. So we used a Stardust and an Aurora to shoot across the lake. You can see in the photo that it's actually me standing there, and the light across on the other side is an Ayrton Cobra. And the distance was a little bit above 4,000 meters. They equipped a van with a Cobra on the roof and a battery pack and an Aurora. We didn't use the built-in this time because the distance was... We anticipated that the distance will be too long for the built-in receiver to get a signal from 4 kilometers away. What we did, we placed a directional at the receiver, a directional at the transmitter, and used CRMX. Worked perfectly, and yes, this is outside of regulations, so we only did it for testing purposes until the police showed up and asked us what we were doing with a major searchlight all over Zurich. Luckily, we had all the permissions in place, even from the airport, to run around and roaming with a Cobra. But it's a proof to show that you can do long distances as well. Perfectly possible, just using the right tools. A use case from a shopping mall in France, a massive shopping mall where they wanted to light from the outside of the structure. This is using the older Outdoor FX and RX, but it's a good example of how to plan for a structure that looks like this. So in the middle, we have the transmitter, we have the source of DMX coming from within. And to reach to the outside of the outer circle, first we had to use one transmitter that had a link to all the receivers. The receivers then could be cable connected to new transmitters on the outside, and these transmitters on the outside could link to the actual fixtures. So here we didn't use a repeater, but instead we used a receiver, had a cable to the transmitter, and out it goes. So of course you can create manual repeaters just using a cable between two boxes. And in this way we managed to cover the whole shopping mall. Another case in Lusail Plaza Towers in Qatar. For the World Cup they did this. Well, it's actually mounted permanently, of course. The skyscrapers are 310 meters high, the two large ones, and they're illuminated by 1,000 fixtures from Griven. And here they wanted it to be controlled wirelessly. So they have 128 universes of wireless controlling the lights of the building facades, using 128 F1s and 64 F2s with directional antennas here, I would like to add. And the effect is something like this, where they can sort of project different parts on the facades. Of course, this was also quite complex installations where we had close discussions together with Griven, who was doing this project. So, wireless DMX, now you know how to trust it, now you know how to fix it, and now you can actually propose this as a solution. Be confident in knowing how to fix problems. If you have problems, of course we're here to help. We want to be part of these projects. When you do advanced projects, please involve us. We'll help you with the planning, we'll help you with what equipment you might need, and we're here for you to make sure that you can propose this to your customers and make sure that you trust it as much as we do. On the social media, make sure you follow Lumen Radio. We want to see what you're doing. Tag us whenever you do any kind of trade shows or presentations or advertise our material. We really like to have an interaction on social media. And that's it. The training is completed, and I hope you learned something today. If you have any more questions now, still written down on your piece of paper that I told you in the beginning that you should have, now is the time to send me an email or give me a call or have a meeting with your sales representative to make sure that we answer all your questions when it comes to wireless DMX. I hope you enjoyed this, and I thank you for watching. It's been a pleasure to convey the trust I have in wireless DMX to all of you. Thank you.